Good evening and welcome to music training. So today we're going to be considering some basics and fundamentals of music training. And I want us to take note that this training is specifically for singers. So I would okay, it's for singers and for beginners. So I would be skipping some things to avoid being too complicated at the beginning, and also be skipping some things that are not so relevant to singers. Do you get so? Because when you learn stuff in music, it's good to learn things that you'll be able to apply as soon as possible, so that they would stick and you would be able to learn properly with the right flow. So um, going very quickly, if you look at what we have notes and solfa. So musical notes are the basic music. They are the basic building blocks of music, and generally, the typical musical note is shown like this. So this is actually an accurate description of a musical note, and musical note tells us not only the pitch but also the duration. So what's pitch? Pitch is just basically. So let's take note of these terms, because when it comes to music theory, terms are very important. You get so. First term here is pitch. Pitch is just how high or low a note sounds. So very simple. If I have do re mi fa so, so is at a higher pitch than do. You get so that is basic. Your pitch is just like how notes are relative to each other in terms of range. Yeah, and then duration is how long the note is supposed to be. So, but for the purpose of this class, we'll just simplify it to just pitches. Let's leave duration out of it first. If you remember your music class, we have breathe, semi-breathe, quiver, and all that. So those are those tell us how long the note's supposed to last for. For example, in because sheet music, by looking at sheet music, you can tell exactly how the song goes. So if I'm singing, there's a difference between do re mi and do re mi. But if I just write do re mi, you cannot tell. But if you look at actual sheet music, you can tell the difference. But for now, let's just look at pitch. So musical notes, this is Nigeria. Most of us learn music starting with tonic solfa because it is a simplified way, right? So I would like to say that tonic solfa is just like a general way of quickly putting down how a song sounds to get and less complicated. So tonic solfa is still very relevant, right? If you're going to talk in the universal language of music, you need to be familiar with musical notes. So quickly, what are the notes that we have? Music uses seven letters A to G. So now what we are looking at now is a scale. You get so and a scale, we're going to get that straight to that very quickly. But I'm just briefly explaining. A scale is just an arrangement of musical notes. Okay, what? Just take it down now. A scale is an arrangement of musical notes, you know, according to a defined pattern. So I'm doing this video without a script, so I might end up going back and forth. So just take notes of different things as they come. So a scale is an arrangement of musical notes according to a defined pattern, and it is a repetitive arrangement. So we have the major scale, which is the most common scale. So if I do something like do re mi fa sol la ti, that's a major scale, and it's repetitive in the sense that I can do do re mi fa sol la ti, start again do re mi fa sol la ti, I keep going do re mi fa sol, so it keeps going like that. So it is repetitive. So the notes are the same. So now for the purpose of this class, we use the C major scale to explain, right? And why do we use the C major scale? Because if the C major scale does not have any sharps or flats, so if I tell you what's the C major scale, you just say C D E F G A B. All right, this is the only scale that does not have. But if you look at, for example, if you look at the A major scale, you can see that we have a couple of sharps and flats, and that's not so beginner friendly. So the C major scale, all right. So to understand this in we need to also learn another musical terminology, which is what's called tone and semitone. So tone is shortest distance between two notes, you know, at least in Western music, you get. As we go further, we'll explain more and realize that semitone is not necessarily the smallest interval. But for now, semitone is the smallest interval between two notes. And as his name implies, semitone means half a tone. So a tone would mean two semitones, right? So sometimes you hear it's called a whole tone, right? So now, I said that a scale is built on a pattern, right? So to build this major scale, we need the pattern whole, or as my music teacher would make us recite them: tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, right? So we have two tones, then a semitone, then three tones, then a semitone. So, and what you know, I said that we said, or I said rather, that the semitone is the smallest distance, right? So in music, we call that distance interval, right? So take that down. Interval is the pitch distance, right, between two musical notes, right? So interval. So tone is an interval, semitone is an interval. So that means that when you pick a note, right, you start. So for example, we start from C. If you move a semitone from C, we get to C sharp. Right. So if you move up from C, we get to C sharp. If you move up from C sharp, we get to D. Now that means that if I move two semitones from C, right, so you can look at those semitones as like ladders or steps. So imagine that instead of climbing a staircase one by one, you decide to climb two, like jump over one to the next one. That is a tone. If I move a tone from C, that gives me D, right? Then move a tone from D, that gives me E. Now between E and F, there is no semitone. So if you move a semitone from E, we get to F. So now if I ask you what is the interval between C and D, a tone. What's the interval between C and C sharp? A semitone. That's good. Um, and then what we call these accidentals. You get to, or what we commonly refer to as minors. So if you look at um, so what we are seeing, I'm sure you can see that we have some letters up. So above C sharp we have D, and then I put in front a symbol like B, so that's flat. So D flat. So you don't have to superscript the symbols. I just like to do that. So D flat is the same thing as C sharp. So I like to take a picture like this. If I'm going up from C, I'll get to C sharp. But if I'm coming down from D, I'll get to D flat. Let's take G and A. If I'm going up from G, I get to G sharp. But rather, if I'm coming down from A, I get to A flat. But the two notes are one and the same. So, but now you can see I underlined some. So these ones that I underlined are the common names. So you hardly hear D flat. You most likely hear C sharp. You hardly hear um A sharp. You most likely hear B flat. Right. Now, what this means is that if you follow the formula tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, you would always create a major scale. So if I follow the formula from C, um, a tone from C will be D, tone from D, E, a semitone from E is F, and then all the way, and it gets back to the same note. Great. Now, a solfa is just a representation of the major scale. Now, the solfa does not indicate the key you are in compared to the note. So, for example, if you have if you're in the key of C, you have do re mi fa sol la ti do. Now if I change my key to like A, do re mi fa sol la ti do. I don't know if that was the same key, but let me try to be accurate. If I have do re mi, so let's say that is C, do re mi fa sol la ti do. Same tonic so far. The musical note to be C D E F G A B C. All right. But then if I move to the from the key of C to the key of A, so oh, so this is A now. Do re mi fa sol la ti do. You can see that the major scale is still the same. Do re mi fa sol la ti do, but the musical notes would have changed to. Let me see if I can say this quickly. A, so A B C sharp, D E F sharp, A flat A. Right, that sounds so weird. Right, so tonic so far does not show you. So um, so now if now let me define some other terms. When you hear the key, right, key. So the key is more or less the starting note, or what we call the root note, or what we call the tonic, right? So let's take note of those terms: starting note, root note, tonic. That's the building. That's like the first step at the base of the ladder, right? And it determines the other notes. So if I start from C, those are the notes that will form my major scale, right? And if I start from A, the notes will change. So when you say put me in the key of something, that means that you want that note to be the starting point. Do you understand? So if you want to be on the key of A, these are the notes you have, right? And that's why if you're a singer, for example, you're singing a song that is on C and it's too high. If you want to go, if you want to take it lower, some people just call out keys and say and change it to this. They don't actually know how these keys are even related to each other. So if I'm singing on the key of C and I need the song to be a bit lower, I can easily go to maybe B or A, right? But if I need to go a bit higher, I can go to D or E. You get. So you need to understand that that is how the notes are in reference to each other. Do you understand? So that's what my key. Like the key is also named a musical note. Is named after a musical note, but they are different, right? So the key determines the root note, and that determines all the other notes that will be in that um key. Now let's look at what we call minors and accidentals. So I'm very sure a lot of us have heard Fi, I've heard Tor, maybe some of us have heard Z. So how do we get that? So between Do and Re, there's a minor there, as we're used to referring. But while learning music theory, so accidentals. So we have D. Between Re and Mi, we have Mo. Between Fa and So, we have Fi. We have between So and La, we have Z. Between La and T, we have To. So you can see that these musical notes have first letters that are either um for the notes before them. For example, between Do and Re, we have D. So you can see that D, the first letter is Do, like D, right? But if you look at, for example, if you look at To, right, you can see that To starts from T, which is the letter of the note after, right? So a common way to picture major notes and minor notes is to look at the keyboard, right? You see that the white keys, that's if you're in key of C, are the okay, and I also forgot to mention this. So I said the ones in between, that's the sharps and flats, they're called accidentals. Then the ones that are just like normal letters are called natural notes, like naturals. You get, so the white keys are the natural notes, while the black keys are the um accidentals if you're in the key of C. So that's a good way to picture them, right? So that is it for the first lecture on music theory. So see you in the next lecture.